The book of Job is one of the most profound and challenging books in the Bible, tackling one of the most difficult questions of human existence. Why do we suffer? Job's story is one of immense pain, deep questioning, and ultimately unshakable faith. It is a story that resonates with anyone who has ever faced hardship, loss, or confusion about God's plans. Today, we will take a deep dive into the book of Job, uncover its wisdom, and apply its lessons to our lives. The book of Job opens with an introduction to Job, a man described as blameless and upright, one who feared God and turned away from evil. He is wealthy, blessed with a large family, and highly respected. Job is living the ideal life, but suddenly everything is taken from him: his livestock, his servants, his children, all gone in an instant. If that wasn't enough, Job is then afflicted with painful sores all over his body. The suffering is unimaginable. But what makes Job's suffering unique is what happens behind the scenes. In the heavenly courts, Satan challenges God, claiming that Job is only faithful because of his blessings. Take them away, Satan argues, and he will curse you to your face. God allows Satan to test Job, but with one condition: he must not take Job's life. Imagine how Job must have felt. One moment, he had everything. The next, his world was in ruins. He had been faithful. He had done nothing wrong. Yet, he was suffering. How often do we ask the same question? Why does God allow suffering? Why do bad things happen to good people? As Job sits in agony, his three friends, Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar, come to comfort him. At first, they do something very wise. They sit with him in silence for 7 days. But then, they begin to speak, and their words reveal a flawed understanding of suffering. They insist that Job must have sinned. After all, in their worldview, God rewards the righteous and punishes the wicked. If Job is suffering, he must be guilty of some hidden sin. Have you ever had friends who, instead of comforting you, only made things worse? That's what happened to Job. His friends' words were not only unhelpful, but they also misrepresented God's justice. Job, in his pain, cries out to God, demanding an explanation. Why is this happening? What has he done to deserve this? At this point, Job teaches us something valuable. It's okay to question God. It's okay to pour out our pain, confusion, and frustration. Job doesn't turn away from God. He wrestles with him. This is an important lesson. Faith doesn't mean we have all the answers. Faith means we bring our struggles to God, even when we don't understand. As Job's friends continue to insist that he must be at fault, another figure, Elihu, enters the scene. He brings a slightly different perspective. He argues that sometimes suffering is not about punishment, but about refinement. God allows suffering to teach, to shape, to draw people closer to Him. While Elihu's argument is not perfect, it brings us closer to the truth. Then, something incredible happens. God speaks. Out of a whirlwind, God answers Job, not with an explanation, but with a series of questions. Where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth? Who marked off its dimensions? Have you ever given orders to the morning or shown the dawn its place? God's response is not what Job expected. Instead of answering the question of suffering, God reveals His majesty, His power, and His infinite wisdom. At first, it may seem like God is avoiding Job's questions, but in reality, He is showing Job that the universe is far more complex than we can comprehend. Sometimes we don't get the answers we want, but we are reminded that God is in control, and that is enough. By the end of the book, Job repents, not because he was guilty of sin, but because he realizes that his understanding of God was limited. God then restores Job, blessing him with even more than he had before. But the true lesson of Job is not in the restoration of his fortunes. It is in the deeper faith and trust he gains through his suffering. So, what can we learn from Job's story? First, suffering is not always a punishment. Sometimes, God allows trials for reasons beyond our understanding. Second, it's okay to bring our pain and questions to God. Faith is not about having all the answers, but about trusting God even when we don't. And third, God is sovereign. Even when life doesn't make sense, we can trust that He is in control. Job's story points us to Jesus. Just like Job, Jesus was a righteous man who suffered immensely. He was mocked, beaten, and crucified, not for his own sins, but for ours. And just like Job, Jesus remained faithful, entrusting himself to the Father. Because of Jesus, we have hope in our suffering. Because of Jesus, we can trust that no pain is wasted, that God is working all things for good. If you are going through a season of suffering, know this: you are not alone. God sees you, He hears you, and He is with you. Hold on to faith, keep trusting, and remember the lesson of Job. Sometimes, suffering is not about what we have done wrong, but about what God is doing in us. In addition, Job's story challenges us to examine our own response to suffering. Do we trust God even when life doesn't go our way? Do we lean on His promises, or do we allow doubt and despair to take hold? Job's perseverance teaches us that even when we do not understand, we must remain faithful because God's wisdom far surpasses our own. Furthermore, Job's story is a reminder that we must be careful with how we comfort others in their suffering. His friends thought they had all the answers, but they were wrong. Their misguided advice only added to Job's pain. This teaches us an important lesson. Sometimes, the best thing we can do for someone who is suffering is to simply be present, listen, and pray for them. We don't always have to have the right words. Sometimes, love and empathy speak louder than any explanation. Another powerful lesson from Job's journey is patience. Job endured immense suffering for a long period before he saw restoration. In our fast-paced world, we often expect instant relief, instant answers, and instant results. But God works on His own timeline. James 5:11 says, "You have heard of Job's perseverance and have seen what the Lord finally brought about. The Lord is full of compassion and mercy." This reminds us that waiting on God is never in vain. His timing is always perfect, even when it doesn't align with ours. Lastly, Job's story teaches us that our faith should not be dependent on our circumstances. If we only trust God when life is good, then our faith is shallow. True faith trusts God even in the storm, even in the suffering, even when we don't see a way out. Job's ultimate declaration: though he slay me, yet will I trust him, Job 13:15, is one of the most powerful statements of faith in the Bible. It challenges us to ask ourselves, do we truly trust God no matter what? If this study has blessed you, please like, comment, and subscribe for more in-depth Bible teachings. What lessons have you learned from the book of Job? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Let's continue growing in faith together.